The clinking of glasses still echoed in the grand hall when the little boy walked straight to the man at the center and spoke, "Daddy, will you play with me later?" Time froze. Olivia, the unassuming cleaner of that opulent mansion, felt her world crumble beneath her feet. The child she had secretly raised had just unveiled the truth she'd guarded for 6 long years. And now, before the city's elite, the billionaire Arthur Hayes stared at the child who shared his very eyes. And a single word that threatened to shatter everything. The main ballroom of the Hayes Foundation gleamed with silver and crystal. Governors, influential investors, and A-list celebrities exchanged practiced smiles as the string quartet filled the air with classical melodies. Arthur Hayes, the evening's host, stood by the fireplace, a picture of power and influence, an eloquent speech in one hand, a champagne flute in the other. Then, the unexpected interruption. A small boy, his T-shirt rumpled, emerged amidst the flowing gowns and towering heels. He confidently strode across the polished marble, stopping directly in front of the billionaire, lightly tugging his sleeve. Arthur turned. "Daddy, will you play with me later?" The violin's melody faltered. Conversations hushed. A glass dropped, its shattering sound piercing the sudden silence. Olivia, on the far side of the room, held her breath. For a fleeting moment, no one reacted. Only Arthur's eyes locked onto the boy. And in that instant, before the gaze of high society, the truth began to unravel. Olivia Santos knew how to fade into the background. Since the age of 14, when she traded school books for a mop, she'd learned that the world rarely gives a second glance to those who clean its forgotten corners. Born in the outskirts of Vila Nova, a working-class neighborhood, she was the eldest of 3 girls. Her mother, a widow, cleaned 4 different houses to make ends meet. Her father, a truck driver, had left and never returned. Olivia grew up hearing that education doesn't fill bellies, yet she secretly kept textbooks hidden beneath her mattress. At 19, armed with a high school diploma and a heart brimming with hope, she boarded a bus for the capital, Rio de Janeiro, with one singular aim: to give the child she might one day have a life utterly unlike her own. Life in Rio was not kind. She drifted through damp boarding houses, unstable temporary jobs, suspicious glances, and hands that sought more than she was willing to give. Until a cleaning position at the Hayes estate materialized. Stability, rules, a uniform, silence. It was there that she first encountered Arthur. He was younger than she'd imagined, as distant as the mansion's long corridors, yet surprisingly gentle in rare moments. One New Year's Eve, after all staff had been dismissed, Olivia returned to retrieve a forgotten coat. Arthur was alone, drinking in the dim light. He had just lost his father, and she had just learned her youngest sister had a lung tumor. 2 shattered strangers, an encounter that should never have extended beyond that night. 6 weeks later, she knew she was pregnant, and she chose to tell no one. Who would believe her? Who would even care? Lucas was born on a rainy afternoon, in a public hospital, surrounded only by the hum of machines and the cries of other newborns. Olivia made a solemn vow to herself: "I will never let him feel the way I've felt." She raised the boy in the small annex behind the service wing. She played with him in the backyard, taught him to draw, to be kind, to keep quiet when the owners were nearby. And whenever he asked, "Mom, where's my dad?" she would answer with a smile, "It doesn't matter where he is, my son. What matters is that I'm here." But Lucas was growing, and children grow with questions. All Olivia ever wanted was for Lucas to have what she never did, a life without fear. She didn't dream of riches. She didn't want him to inherit anything, just that he wouldn't be invisible like she always was. She longed for him to study, to have friends, to share laughter after school. She wanted him to feel like he belonged somewhere. She did everything she could. She saved every spare coin for used books. She invented games with jar lids. And every Sunday she took 2 buses to a park on the other side of the city, a place where no one knew them, just so Lucas could play without being the cleaner's son. But with time, he started noticing things. There were glances, gestures, voices. Arthur would walk through the corridors with that firm, serious, impenetrable stride, and Lucas would watch. Always watch. "Mom?" he asked one day with an innocent yet serious tone. "Why does that man look like me?" Olivia pretended not to hear, but inside she felt something shatter. That night she found a drawing on Lucas's bed. It showed 2 stick figures, one small in a t-shirt, the other tall in a suit, both with the same pair of large, dark eyes. Above the taller figure, a word scrawled in purple crayon: "Daddy." Olivia sat on the bed, the drawing clutched to her chest. The night's silence seemed heavier than ever. She tried to convince herself it was just a phase, that he would soon forget, that it was just childish curiosity. But Lucas was growing, and time waited for no one. Weeks later, she saw him sitting on the back steps of the mansion, alone. He was looking at Arthur, who was on his phone near the garage. "He walks just like me," the boy whispered. Olivia froze. She quickly changed the subject, forced a laugh, made pancakes for dinner. But that night, she cried in the bathroom. For the first time in a very long time, she wanted to shield him from the pain of rejection, from doubt, from shame. But what if the biggest mistake was precisely to hide everything? Even so, she still believed she could control it, that she just needed to work harder, smile more, be quieter, and everything would be fine. But what she didn't know was that fate was already lurking, ready to break the silence in the cruelest way imaginable. That night was unlike any other. Olivia had spent the entire day polishing the main hall, aligning cutlery, ironing tablecloths with the precision of someone trying to avert a disaster. The event was a charity gala for the Hayes Foundation, attended by politicians, renowned doctors, foreign investors. Everything had to be impeccable. She had left Lucas in the small back room with a jar of cookies, a sketchbook, and a serious plea. "You can't come out of here today, okay? Not even for a little bit. Just for today. Mommy promises we'll go to the park tomorrow." He nodded. Lay down on the mattress. But promises made to a 6-year-old are like leaves in the wind. Olivia was collecting glasses in the corner of the room when she heard the silence. Not ordinary silence, but that kind of void that precedes something irreversible. And then she saw him, Lucas, in the middle of the ballroom. Simple clothes, slightly dirty feet, holding his sketchbook to his chest. He walked slowly, weaving between the long dresses, the shimmering shoes, until he stopped in front of Arthur. Olivia felt her heart seize, and then he spoke. "Daddy, will you play with me later?" The words were clear, unmistakable, full of certainty. The room froze. There was the sound of shattering glass, a collective gasp. A man coughed. A woman covered her mouth. Arthur looked at the boy, as if gazing into a mirror he never asked to see. Olivia dropped the tray, ran, each step a desperate thud against the floor. "He doesn't know what he's saying," she gasped, out of breath. "Please, Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry. He's just a child." Arthur took a step back, his eyes still fixed on Lucas, and he asked, "Who is this boy?" Olivia hesitated, then answered with a trembling voice, "My son." The whisper echoed louder than any shout. Arthur's eyes widened. "Your son?" he said, almost disbelievingly. "Yes," she murmured. "His name is Lucas." Someone let out a nervous chuckle in the background. Another whispered, "Is this some kind of joke?" Arthur growled. "You teach your son to call me father? Here, in the middle of my event? I never taught him that, I swear. I never said a word about you. He just what?" he interrupted, his voice sharp. "He invented it?" Olivia fell to her knees and hugged her son, who was now visibly frightened. "He doesn't know what it means. Please forgive me. Please forgive me." Arthur didn't respond, his hard eyes fixed on hers, and for a second something flickered in them, perhaps a memory, a night, a forgotten moment. Olivia slowly rose. "We're leaving," she said, her voice trembling. "Right now." She took Lucas by the hand and walked through the ballroom, feeling the eyes of the world burning into her back. She felt every whisper, every stifled laugh, every judgment. In the service corridor, Lucas stopped. He looked at her, eyes brimming, but no tears fell. "Mum, did I do something wrong?" Olivia knelt, touched his face with her cold hands. "No, my love, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why did he say he's not my dad?" She swallowed hard. "Because he doesn't know who you are yet." Lucas simply nodded, asked no more questions. That night, Olivia stayed awake watching her son sleep. Her uniform still dirty, her hands trembling, her chest crushed by shame and fear. The secret was no longer hers alone, and she had no idea what would come next. Have you ever had to keep a truth hidden for so long that it began to suffocate you from within? Have you ever needed to conceal something to protect someone you love, even if it hurt you? If so, write yes in the comments below. Sometimes, seeing that others also carry similar silences is all we need not to feel so alone. The next day dawned grey, as if the sky knew what had transpired. Olivia prepared breakfast in silence. Lucas sat on the mattress, not drawing, not asking questions. He just stared at the floor, twirling a pencil between his fingers. She tried to start a conversation. "Want to go to the park later?" He shrugged. It was that gesture, small, automatic, indifferent, that broke her. Olivia sat beside him and took a deep breath. "I know yesterday was confusing, Lucas." He didn't respond. "I should have told you sooner. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I loved you enough, that would be sufficient." Lucas slowly lifted his eyes. "But he said he's not my dad, because he doesn't know he is. Yet," Olivia replied, almost in a whisper. That night, after her son fell asleep, Olivia climbed onto a chair and retrieved an old box hidden high in the wardrobe. Inside, there was only one thing, a photograph, crumbled, faded, but real. In it, she and Arthur stood side by side, a photo taken years ago during a staff party. Arthur was smiling, and his arm was around her shoulders, a brief gesture, but sincere. The only proof that for one night he saw her as someone. Olivia gazed at the image like someone staring at a wound that never healed. She didn't seek revenge, didn't want a scandal. She just wanted her son not to grow up believing he was the result of a mistake. She took the photo, wrote a short letter, her handwriting shaky. "I never asked for anything, never wanted to disrupt your life, but he deserves to be seen, and you deserve to know." She folded everything carefully, placed it in a plain envelope, and walked to Arthur's personal assistant's office. The assistant's name was Daniel Costa. She waited for the corridor to be empty and slid the envelope under the door. Then she returned to the small room and lay down beside Lucas. For the first time in 6 years, she felt she had done the right thing. The envelope sat on Daniel's desk for almost 2 days. Olivia pretended not to expect a response, but with every step in the main corridor, her heart raced as if she carried a silent bomb in her chest. Daniel had always been courteous, but discreet. He never crossed the line between the employers and the staff. That's why, when he looked at Olivia at Tuesday's breakfast, with a slight nod, she knew. He had read it. That afternoon, Arthur was locked in his office. Daniel entered and placed the envelope on the desk. Arthur looked up, annoyed. "What is this?" "Something you might need to see." Arthur didn't respond. He simply opened the envelope, read the letter, looked at the photo. It took a few seconds. Then he leaned back in his chair for a long moment, as if the air had vanished from the room. "Is this serious?" "It appears so." Arthur said nothing more. He just sat there, staring at the paper, as if trying to recall something he had spent too long avoiding. That night, he didn't dine with his guests. The next day, for the first time in years, he went down to the garden at the time he knew Lucas usually played. He watched from a distance, The boy was alone, sitting on the ground, drawing something with small, worn-colored pencils. The same dark eyes, the same way of frowning when concentrating. Arthur felt an unfamiliar discomfort. It wasn't fear. It was something more vulnerable, as if he saw a part of himself where he had never looked. Olivia noticed the shift in atmosphere. Arthur was quieter. His gazes lingered a little longer, and for 3 consecutive mornings he paused when he saw her in the corridor, as if he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. On Wednesday, when she arrived back in the small room with Lucas after school, there was a box at the door. Inside, a new case of professional drawing pencils, and a note, handwritten, "Keep creating." No signature, but she would recognize that handwriting anywhere. Lucas smiled wider than he had in days. Olivia felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to believe this was a beginning. But what if it wasn't? What if Arthur was just trying to ease his own conscience? What if that gesture was the only one, and the last? She spent the night awake, battling the same questions that had haunted her for 6 years. What if he doesn't want to acknowledge him? What if he fires me? What if Lucas is rejected? For a moment, she thought about leaving, resigning, vanishing. But then she remembered Lucas's face opening that box, the sparkle in his eyes, the childlike hope that still existed, even after public rejection. She couldn't take that from him. Not now. In another wing of the mansion, Arthur also couldn't sleep. The photo remained on his desk. He looked at it and saw in it not just Olivia, but a version of himself he had forgotten, human, imperfect, solitary. And now there was a boy with his eyes, his stride, his courage, a boy who had called him Daddy in front of an entire room. And for some reason, he could no longer pretend that none of it had happened. Olivia was scrubbing the main entrance floor when she heard the voice. "Ms. Santos?" She turned. Daniel Costa, the assistant, stood at the door to the west corridor. "Mr. Hayes would like to speak with you. In his office. Now." Olivia swallowed hard. Her hands were damp. Her heart even more so. She dried her palms on her apron, took a deep breath, and followed. The corridor seemed longer than ever. Her footsteps echoed. She passed expensive paintings, double doors, furniture she never dared to touch. Daniel opened the door. Arthur stood there. No jacket, sleeves rolled up. His expression unreadable. He didn't ask her to sit, just looked at her for what felt like a lifetime. "I read the letter." Olivia nodded almost voicelessly. Arthur walked around the desk. "You should have told me." She lowered her eyes. "I wanted to, so many times, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing this job. Afraid of not being believed. Afraid of everything." Silence. "Is he mine?" Arthur asked directly. "Yes." The word came out soft, but firm. Arthur nodded, like someone finally understanding what they already knew. "I remember that night," he said, "and I remember how, for a few hours, I felt less alone with you than I had in many years." Olivia bit her lower lip. She was trembling. "I never wanted to harm you. I never expected anything. I just didn't want Lucas to grow up thinking he was a mistake." Arthur didn't answer. He walked across the room, exited through the door. Olivia stood still, not understanding, but then, from the other side of the house, she heard something, a rare sound, children's laughter. Arthur walked to the garden. Lucas was sitting on the grass, drawing with his new pencils. The boy saw him, straightened his body, as if unsure whether to run or smile. Arthur knelt. "Hi, Lucas." The boy didn't respond. Arthur extended his hand. "Can I sit with you?" Lucas hesitated, then nodded. The man sat on the grass, picked up a green pencil, drew a crooked tree. Lucas laughed. "It's kinda ugly. I'm terrible at this," Arthur said, smiling. Lucas handed him a blue pencil. "Let's make a sky, then." Olivia watched from the veranda. The sun was setting, painting the sky golden. It was simple, it was quiet, but it was real. There, without promises, without spotlights, without grand words, something new began. In the weeks that followed, the routine at the mansion didn't outwardly change much. Olivia still woke early, washing, cleaning, polishing, but something had shifted. Now, when she passed through the corridors, the other staff members lowered their voices, out of respect, not disdain. Daniel smiled kindly. And Arthur, he announced nothing, called no journalists, made no emotional speech, but every morning Lucas was called to have breakfast in the main dining room. Every day after school, he received private lessons from a tutor personally recommended by Arthur, and at the end of some afternoons, the garden would fall silent, until laughter emerged from the grass, drawings, words exchanged. Olivia watched from afar. She didn't want an apology, nor recognition, nor inheritance. She wanted only this, for her son to be seen, for him to have the chance to grow with dignity. And now, he had it. Not because he was the son of a billionaire, but because someone finally recognized what had always been there. And the lesson Olivia learned is one that might resonate with you too. We don't always need to shout to be heard. Love doesn't always need a seal or a last name. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to break the silence, because the truth, when spoken with love, can be the beginning of everything. If this story touched you in some way, leave a like. It's a simple gesture, but it shows me that it's worth continuing to bring stories that touch the heart. And I love knowing who is on the other side of the screen. Tell me in the comments, which city or country are you watching from? It's always special to see where these stories are reaching. If you believe in the power of real, profound and transformative narratives, subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories to tell, and every new subscription is what gives me strength to continue. And now, don't leave yet. Choose one of the 2 stories on the screen. I'll see you in the next video.